All right, we are diving into King Lear, huh? It seems like we're heading into some pretty dark territory with this play. Even a touch of nihilism, maybe.
It's not just a straightforward tragedy. The notes point to a much bleaker worldview than we might expect. I think Shakespeare was really grappling with some unsettling ideas here.
And speaking of Shakespeare and his bag of tricks, did you know he pretty much ignores those classical unities, time, place, and action, the ones everyone else was obsessed with?
Even though he ditches those unities, he still keeps the focus on those highborn characters and their inevitable downfalls. And that actually fits right in with Aristotle's whole idea of tragedy. It's almost as if Shakespeare is saying, yeah, I know your definition of tragedy, but I'm going to show it to you on my own terms.
But it's so interesting because even though he throws out certain conventions like that, he sticks to others. It's like a deliberate choice, almost to highlight those aspects that he did choose to keep, giving them more impact.
It's deliberate, absolutely. And you see it right from the start of the play. Most Shakespearean tragedies, they build towards the destruction. But Lear, it starts with it. The kingdom's already in chaos from Act 1 because of Lear's big mistake. It throws the audience right into the heart of the conflict right away.
And then there's that one word, that one tiny word that just echoes through the entire play: nothing. Cordelia's refusal to play her father's game, that stark nothing that she utters, it's like the catalyst for the entire tragedy.
Oh, it is. And it's not just a random word. It's like Shakespeare is using nothing to explore the very core of emptiness, this idea of nihilism.
Yeah.
He strips away those illusions that we cling to, and he forces us to confront the possibility of a world that's just devoid of meaning.
And who better to guide us through that kind of bleak landscape than Lear's fool? Talk about a character who just cuts through all the deception.
The fool's like a truth teller, using wit and wordplay to expose everyone's folly around him. He's the only one who can call Lear out directly, and he does it with this amazing blend of humor and just heartbreaking honesty.
It's that analogy that he makes that always gets me, about the cook boiling the eels alive because she doesn't want to hurt them. It's so darkly humorous, but it's such a perfect example of Lear's tragic flaw valuing flattery and appearances over genuine love and understanding.
It's such a powerful illustration of how Shakespeare can take something as simple as a joke and use it to reveal such a profound truth. The fool might speak in riddles, but his words are meant to make us think, make us uncomfortable, make us confront those difficult realities.
Speaking of uncomfortable, can we talk about the storm for a minute?
Oh, the storm. We can't ignore the storm.
It's impossible. It's not just a plot device, is it? It's so central to the whole play.
It's a force of nature. It's like the turmoil in Lear's mind. And I think on a larger level, it symbolizes like a crisis of existence. The universe is completely indifferent to human suffering.
It's the image of Lear completely stripped bare by that storm, just railing against the heavens. It's such a powerful picture of how vulnerable we are in the face of forces that we can't even begin to understand. And it's from that point, from that storm, that we see him descend into madness.
It is a turning point. It's like this descent into madness that ultimately leads to a different kind of clarity for him. And it's through that madness that he's finally able to see through all those illusions of power and status and what really matters. Love, compassion, those are the things he had dismissed. Now he's starting to see their true value.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, though, how Lear's journey kind of mirrors what's going on with Gloucester and his sons, Hector and Edmund.
Yeah.
That whole subplot really digs into those same themes of cruelty and how suffering just seems to repeat itself. It's a part of the human experience, for sure. And the cruelty that's inflicted on Gloucester, it's almost unbearable to stomach. You can tell Shakespeare wasn't afraid to show just how brutal things could get.
And just when you think things can't possibly get any worse for these characters, Act 5 hits us with a 1-2 punch. Cordelia's death and Lear's total mental breakdown. Come on.
Act 5 is just brutal.
I know.
It's relentless.
You can't help but feel the emotional weight of it all. And that line, when Lear sees Cordelia after everything they've been through, and he says, "Pray do not mock me."
Oh, heartbreaking.
It just destroys you. You can hear it in his voice, that little bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, there's some chance of redemption, some light at the end of this incredibly dark tunnel.
Right. But that light never really comes, does it? At least not in the way we expect. Lear dies without any real justice being served.
Yeah.
Goneril and Regan, they get what's coming to them eventually.
Right.
But Cordelia, the one character who represents love and goodness, she's gone.
It's that lack of poetic justice that really bothered critics, even like way back in the day.
I can imagine.
Those lecture even mentioned that Samuel Johnson hated it. He was not a fan. And for over 100 years, audiences actually preferred a rewritten version with a happy ending.
We want things to work out right. We want order restored, even if it means changing the whole point of the story. But Shakespeare, he disrupts that need for a neat little bow on everything.
Yeah.
He forces us to sit with the reality that sometimes there are no easy answers. Suffering doesn't just disappear because we want it to.
Where does that leave us then? If there's no poetic justice, no happy ending, is it all just despair? Is that what we're supposed to take away from this? The lecture brings up the critic, A.C. Bradley. He's the one who argues that Lear's suffering, as awful as it is, ultimately leads him to a higher understanding, like a spiritual growth.
There's no denying how much Lear suffers. But whether or not he actually finds redemption, I think that's really up to each person to decide for themselves. Maybe redemption doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. Maybe it's about those smaller moments of grace, those little flickers of human connection that persist even when everything seems hopeless.
Moments like Cordelia's love for her father, even after he banishes her, or Kent risking his own life to stay loyal to Lear. Those little acts of love and loyalty, they really stand out against all that darkness and betrayal.
They do. They really do. And it's that glimmer of humanity, of love and compassion existing alongside the tragedy that makes us question, is it enough? Can those things redeem a worldview as bleak as the one Shakespeare shows us? And that's something each of us has to grapple with.
It's like we're supposed to hold both of those things in our minds at the same time.
Yeah.
The immense suffering and then these little glimmers of hope and compassion.
That blinding scene, it's one of the most disturbing things Shakespeare ever wrote.
Right.
But it's there for a reason. It's
Yeah.
about power, about how cruel people can be to each other. Gloucester, he was deceived by his own son, Edmund. It's a reminder that any of us can be tricked, can be blind to the truth, even when it's staring us right in the face.
And that whole idea of blindness leading to a different kind of sight, that comes up with Lear too, doesn't it?
It does.
It's his madness, as horrific as it is to watch. It also allows him to see the world in a new way, without all those illusions and assumptions he had before.
Exactly. Both Lear and Gloucester, they go through this metaphorical blindness that ultimately leads to a different kind of understanding. It's painful, but it reveals some really profound truths.
So if there's no poetic justice, no happy ending to make us feel better, what are we supposed to take away from this play? Is it all just despair?
I think it suggests that even when things are at their worst, even when we experience unimaginable loss, there's still a chance for growth, for compassion, for finding meaning, even in a world that often feels meaningless.
The lecturer mentioned that critic again, A.C. Bradley, the one who said that Lear's suffering is actually a kind of purification process. Can there really be redemption in the world that Shakespeare is showing us?
I think it's up to each of us to decide what we believe. Lear's journey might be full of pain, but it does offer a glimmer of hope. It reminds us that the human spirit is capable of enduring incredible things and even finding grace, even when it seems impossible.
And it's those little moments of grace that make it all bearable. Without Cordelia's love, without Kent's loyalty, the fool's honesty, it would just be too much.
I agree. It's those flickers of humanity, those little acts of kindness that remind us there's still good in the world. Even in the darkest of times. We might not always get the resolution we want. The world might not always make sense. But those things, love, compassion, loyalty, they still exist.
King Lear, it's not an easy play to digest, but it's one that definitely stays with you.